indoors and let the air flow as we welcome this wonderful crowd of individuals gathered to hear about our natural history of the Central Highlands of Arizona, where we're fortunate enough to call our home. Out of curiosity, is there anyone here today for whom this is your first visit to the Highland Center? Look at that! Welcome! Welcome, welcome. Well, we'll do our best to pull you in and keep you coming back. Whether you've been here one time, whether you've been here 1,001 times, or anywhere in between, please know that you are always welcome here. We are so delighted to have you. The Highland Center is a nature center that operates on special use permit through Prescott National Forest. We are on 80 acres of beautiful trails, ADA accessible discovery gardens, of course our classroom that we're enjoying right now. Our mission is to help children and adults discover the wonders of nature and become wise caretakers of the land. And we effect that mission in all sorts of ways, from our programs for 0 to 5-year-olds, like our newly implemented Family Forest Play program, to custom programs for veterans and Alzheimer's Association participants, and everything in between. We take our mission seriously, and we thank you for joining us in this educational opportunity. My name is Maria Eisnagel. I serve as Education Director here at the Highland Center. And I do want to mention that though we are on special use permit through a federal agency, we are not in fact federally funded. We get that question a lot of times, and so I wanted to address that. We're a nonprofit organization, and so we do count on memberships, donations, sponsorships, large gifts, and everything in between. And we have fundraising opportunities throughout the year, but for the purposes of today, if you feel compelled to give, that will help us be able to continue to offer quality educational programming like the speaker that we're about to hear from. There's an opportunity for you to donate directly to that cause in the form of a metal donation receptacle. It's on your way out. It is right before you cross the bridge, right next to the Nicole Truchell owl sculpture. You'll find a brown metal box that you can donate to if you'd like to, and we'd be ever so grateful. We're available for questions afterwards. We're available to process any memberships if you'd like. First things first, where are the restrooms? Let's take care of that. If you go out this door, the way that you came in, and you wind around the building, there's a beautiful sculpture, and there's a giant building behind it that says restrooms. So please take care of your own physical needs throughout the course of the presentation. We also have some water available in the back. It can get a little toasty in here when this room gets a lot of people in it, so just please do take care of yourselves. Any questions before we proceed? Excellent. Well, welcome today to our talk entitled Getting to Know Our Neighbors, the Javelinas, Ecology, Natural History, Behavior, and Conservation. We're grateful today to have with us Mariana Altrichter. She is a native of Argentina, lived in Costa Rica for over 5 years, and has been in Prescott since 2011. She received her Master of Science in Wildlife Conservation from the National University of Costa Rica, and her Ph.D. in Natural Resources and Cultural Anthropology from the University of Arizona. Mariana has been doing biological and sociological research for the last 30 years on conservation of biodiversity, use of wildlife by rural and indigenous people, and the interactions between macroeconomics and local people's livelihoods. She has published over 60 scientific papers, books, and book chapters. She also works in environmental education, seeing it as an important approach to cultivate early environmental literacy and conservation-minded adults. Mariana is a member of the IUCN Peccary Specialist Group and has been doing research on peccaries in Central and South America since 1997. She is now focusing on research and conservation of the endangered and endemic Chacoan peccary in northern Argentina. Mariana has two wonderful teenage daughters, Ceiba and Suli. Please help me welcome Mariana.
Thank you, everybody. I don't know if this is working well. Can people in the back tell me if you're hearing me? No? Yes? No? Oh, it's not turned on. That's why. No, this one. Oh, I need this one? Okay. Oh, no. Really? Should I remove this one then? Or does it matter? Okay. Okay. Well, hi again. It's so wonderful to be here. I've been coming here for a long time, since my kids were very little. We moved in when my oldest one was 2 years old, and this was the first place where we came to see and learn about nature in the highlands of Arizona. So nice to see so many friendly faces. That would make me feel more at ease, because I always get a little nervous before talking, and then I get rolling. So don't worry about it. Yeah. So the javelinas. This is a wonderful picture taken by a local photographer. So I wanted to honor Heather Spencer, who shared with me her pictures and let me use this for the talks. I don't know how she manages to take such close-up pictures. I don't want to think about that. So I'll be talking about the javelinas, but I will also talk about some of their close relatives, the other peccaries, and some of the distant relatives, the pigs. So I'll tell you a little bit more about them so that you get an idea of the entire family. So I'm a teacher at Prescott College. I teach conservation and restoration ecology, and one of my students is here, and I should learn that he got a job here. So I'm so happy he graduated in May. And I'm also a member of the IUCN's Species Survival Commission Peccary Specialist Group. I was a chair for that group for several years, and I stepped out. And I'm also the co-director of Proyecto Quimilero. Quimilero is the local name for the Chacoan peccaries, an endemic species in the Chaco region. And I will tell you more about that, because you probably don't know where the Chaco region is. I'll tell you more about that. And that's what I'm doing now when I'm not teaching or taking care of the kids. So why the peccaries? Because they're fascinating. Who has seen a color peccary or a javelina? Okay, most of you. Okay, and if you haven't seen them, just keep your eyes or your nose out for them, and you see them, because they are characteristics of our environment here. And they're getting very used to humans, so you can see them in your backyard. If you have a pool, they might even be swimming in your pool. Oops. They're misunderstood. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about them so that we get to understand them well. And when we get to know a species, we get to love them even more, because some people don't like them. I don't understand why. They're very social. So we have a lot to learn from them and how they maintain a social structure where there's almost no aggression. They're also ecosystem engineers. This might be a new term for you, but I'm going to explain it later. They're an important source of food for a lot of people in Latin America. And I will tell you a little bit more about that. They are tremendously cute, and I hope you'll agree with me, because if not, we're not friends. And they're in the news. So we'll learn about why are they in the news and what's going on with that. There are a couple of good stories about it. First, the word peccary. What does peccary mean? It's an indigenous language, and it means an animal which makes many paths through the woods. Isn't that nice? And that's because they walk in line. Have you seen them? They just make these lines, and they walk through the forest, and they tend to use the same paths. If you were in a rainforest where you actually see a path, not here where it's mostly sandy or rocky soil, you will see their paths. Especially when we're talking about the wily peccary, the other species, that forms groups of 200, 500 individuals, then those paths are really well marked. So who are the peccaries? It's a good moment to introduce you to the family. The Chacoan peccary is the largest one that lives in Paraguay, Argentina, and Bolivia. And it lives in smaller groups. I'll tell you more about them later. The javelina is the smallest one in the family, the most widespread, the most common, the most abundant, and the most resilient and adaptable. The wildleaf peccary is also bigger than the javelina, but forms really large groups, and people are very scared of them, people who will coexist with them. And you can imagine if you meet 500 of them and you're walking in the forest, yeah, they can be a little intimidating. I will show you a video later of them, just so you get the feeling of what it would be like. I spent most of my time studying the wildleaf peccary in Costa Rica. We didn't know much about that species because it is hard to study, so scientists didn't know much about them. So I spent a year living with them. I became a member of their herd, basically. They adopted me. I don't know, they saw me alike or something. And so I was able to follow them every day for a year and look at them as if I'm looking at you right now. Well, imagine you're all wildleaf peccaries. So I was able to see what they were eating and how they were behaving, and I took very detailed notes and turned into my master's thesis. So I love them, and they're the most endangered now because of deforestation and overhunting. I'll tell you more about them later. And here it shows you where they are. Okay, so in yellow, green is where they exist. So you can see the Chacoan peccary has a very small distribution. That's why it's endemic. And this is, by the way, the Chaco forest. It's a biome, or an ecosystem or bioregion. The second largest after the Amazon. And yet most people have never heard about them. It's a dry ecoregion, very rich in biodiversity and not very developed in terms of there's not a lot of people there. The color peccary has the longest distribution. Look at this area because I'll tell you more about this. This is where they have become extinct, and that includes Argentina. And the wildleaf peccary has several areas where local populations have become extirpated due to loss of habitat and overhunting. So the Chacoan peccary is endangered. Classification due to the decrease in populations, and this is the classification that IUCN Red List does. That's when groups of experts get together and look at all the evidence and determine if the species is endangered, critically endangered, or threatened, or not vulnerable, and it's classified. So the color peccary is least concern, meaning that it's not in danger. So peccaries are ungulates. They belong to the order Artiodactyla, suborder Suina, family Tayasuidae. So what does Artiodactyla mean? It means that they walk on even toes. So I would like you to get your hand like this, put all your fingers down except these two, the ring one and the middle finger, and now you turn your hand down, and that's how they step. Those are the two fingers that they use. Yeah, it sounds a little uncomfortable, but so the Suina is separated in two families. The Suidae is the pigs, and the Tayasuidae are the peccaries. The Suidae is a very large family with lots of species. The Tayasuidae family only have 3 to 5 species. Why do I say 2 to 5? Because we are still not sure how many species we have. This is how little we still know about our biodiversity, that we don't know how many species we have. So where do they come from? They come from Asia. They had an ancestor in Asia, and about 35 million years ago, they diverged. Pigs from one side and peccaries on the other side. So they're very distant relatives. Some of the early peccaries made their way to North America. The pigs took over the old world. The peccaries went extinct in the old world, so the pigs took the old world and the peccaries took the new world. They separated the world. So they got established here. This is one of the common ancestors of the peccaries now. This was called the flathead. It was much bigger than the javelinas, like this big. And interestingly, there were about 20 genera of peccaries in North America a while ago. Out of those 20 genera, 2 survived all the way to 10,000 years ago. So that's not a long time ago. Imagine if they were still around. That would be kind of fun. So the Platygonus is the ancestor of the species that we know today. Platygonus lived in North America. Wow, the light is so strange. So you should see North America there. In my slide, you can see it. And so the Platygonus went down to South America. It's believed that that's where the 3 species diverge into the 3 species. Out of those 3 species, the cholera peccary then made its way back to North America. And so that's why now we have the 3 species living in South America. And the Chaco ecoregion is where the 3 coexist. Very interesting. They're very similar in their habits and still they can coexist. So in the US, people always ask, like, are they native, are they not, are they immigrants, or like, when are they being brought in by people? So apparently, they were not found in archaeological sites before the 1700s. But from the 1700s on, there is evidence that they were already here. Heavy exploitation, people would hunt them to use their hides and to use their meat. That led them to be almost exterminated. So the population went very, very low. So they're to protect them, they are designated as big game in 1929, and since then, you can only hunt them if you have a hunting license and permit. And hunting, sport hunting of these species is a big business nowadays. I should look that up. Last year, 30,000 javelinas were hunted in the 3 states where they live. That seems like a really big number to me, but probably they know what they're doing. So the hides, why were they getting the hides? The hides were very good for gloves and jackets, and you can see it would be a lovely jacket. Actually, they would remove the hairs because the hairs kind of feel like a porcupine. They're bristled, they're hard. But the hide itself is really good quality, and still gloves are being sold in the markets, in like luxury market, for very high prices. And the bristles were also used for paintbrushes. Not anymore. I looked it up. Probably not anymore, but it seems like the hair is very good because it holds the paint better than synthetic paintbrushes. So since 1970, the range has been expanding. So this might respond to that question when people say, like, but they weren't here a long time ago. It's like, well, yeah, they are expanding. It's this expanding and contraction of the peripheral populations is natural because several good years, they might move north, several bad years, they die, those animals that have ventured too far north. And so this movement is natural. And with changing temperatures, they might be expanding even further north. The furthest north sightings now are near Santa Fe, and this is new. So this is typical, and warming temperatures might help them to expand farther north. There is apparently some peccaries sighted in Oklahoma, but that is from people who are bringing them and releasing them in their ranches for sport hunting. You're probably familiar with this. Many people think that they're pigs. Well, don't call them pigs, please. But there's nothing wrong with being a pig, but there's just not. They're relatives, as I showed you earlier. And also, don't call them rodents. I know, many people think they're rodents. I'm not going to go into this because I think you all can probably tell why they're not rodents. But I will tell you more about why they're not pigs and what is different between them. So, the canines. I have this lovely skull here. I hope I don't drop it. You can see that the canines face, they're vertical, right? And the pigs, they go horizontal, and then they do crazy things like that. They go horizontal, and then they curve up. What you see on the right is a feral, it's a hog, a forest hog that lives in Africa, in the woods in Africa, and the lower one on the right is a babirusa who lives in Sulawesi and other islands. And those canines can get really big and ridiculous like that. The number of teeth is also different. Peccaries don't have tails. Oh, they do, but it's so tiny that you can't see it. The pigs is a longer tail, so you can see the tails. The toes are different. The peccaries have this third vestigial toe. You can see it, but they don't use it to step on. And the pigs have 4 toes. The diet is different. Peccaries are more herbivore first, but a little bit omnivore, whereas the pigs are true omnivores. They can really eat anything. The peccaries only have 1 to 4 offsprings. They never have more than 4. The pigs can have up to 12 or even more. The peccaries have very slight sexual dimorphism, slightly bigger males, but you can't really tell them when you see them in a group. Whereas the pigs have marked sexual dimorphism. There are 18 or 19 species of pigs, and they've really explored colors and shapes and see who is more ridiculous looking. Like, I mean, it's just like competition, right? The forest hog, I mentioned, lives in Africa. The bird pig lives in Borneo and Sumatra. They're very interesting because they also form really, really big groups, and they follow the production of these trees that produce fruits in different parts of the islands, and they're constantly searching for those fruits. The red river hog, African, water hog, also in Africa, and the pygmy hog is really tiny. That might weigh about like 20 pounds at the most, where the forest hog weighs about 500 pounds. The pygmy hog was believed to be extinct, and then a population was found in northern India, and now there are lots of efforts to try to breed it in captivity and reintroduce it to the wild, and it's succeeding. So fortunately, we have not lost. I mean, imagine a tiny pig, like a little house cat size. So why do we have pigs running in the United States if we already established that they are in the old world? Anyone knows? Yeah, Chase.
Farmers?
Yeah? Right. So they were bought as pigs. The pink pig that you know and that you might eat, that's actually, oops, before we got there. So we have pigs running wild. Sure, we have them also in crates, and we eat them, but they're also running wild. So these are not native from here. And they cause a lot of ecological and economic damage. If you have a ranch in Texas, you will hate these animals because they can destroy your crops in just a few days. So these little guys are the descendants, direct descendants of the wild boar from Eurasia. It's the same species. Some people would call it Sus domestica, but it's the same species. So if you get this little pink guy and let it loose in the wild, they reproduce, and within a few generations, they already look wild. Very interesting. They become the feral pigs. The one origin is just pigs that got loose, and they went into the woods and became feral. The other origin will be when people brought wild boars from Europe for hunting quotas and having them in their farms, and then those escape. So, but they're the same species, right? So free-range domestic pigs can become feral, and this is a feral pig. And it's just maybe 2 or 3 generations. And they're everywhere in the world. All the islands have feral pigs because the pirates used to bring the pigs, release them in the island, and then they knew next year they visit the island, there will be food. And they're terrible for biodiversity. They eat everything. They eat the tortoises in Galapagos. They eat the native birds that nest on the ground. They eat iguanas. They eat everything that they find. So it's really, really bad for biodiversity conservation. And it's very hard to control them or eliminate them. And they reproduce a lot. You know, lots of piglets. 7, 8 months old female can already have piglets. They might have 2 to 12 piglets, and they're spreading everywhere. They're spreading in South America, and they're spreading in North America. Let's go back to the color peccary, the javelina. Why are they called javelina? One might be because of those canines that they have. This is the name of our javelin because they're so sharp and pointy. It also, the word javali means pig in Spanish. So which one of the two origins, not sure, or they might be related. There are 3 species being proposed, and these people, Góngora and Groves, those are colleagues of mine. We have worked on taxonomy of peccaries for a long time together. Together we disputed a 4th species that someone claimed that they called them Peccary maximus, the giant peccary. And so we did some analysis and determined that was not another species, but it's still published out there. So you might find there the giant peccary. You might find it sometime, maybe in Wikipedia it's still there, but it's not. But this one might actually be true. And if you look at those 2 schools, those are very different, right? Look at the overall shape. Look at this bone, how it comes all the way here, where here it stops here. Very different shape of skull. So based on these studies and genetic studies, they're proposing 3 species, still not, approved or accepted, but it might soon become. So just in case at some point you hear there is a North American peccary, it would be our own species that lives here. And it would be the Peccary angulatus. So they live in a huge variety of habitats, which is interesting. And if you think about most mammals, you can identify them with a type of habitat. It's like, oh yeah, that's a tropical animal. This is a desert animal. These ones live everywhere, in the desert, in the rainforest, and even in cold places, up to 7,000 feet altitude. And they do very well, wherever they are. Now, why are they not spreading farther north? Because cold temperatures is what limits their distribution. This is a hide here that if you want to later look at it, something that they don't have is the underfur, right? It's this layer of very soft and thick hair that protects mammals from cold temperatures and also from hot temperatures. Those lower hairs, the guard hairs, do not protect them from temperature as much. So the only way that they have to protect themselves from cold temperatures is to huddle together. It's more a behavior response that is not physiological or anatomical. So they will get together and try to find shelter, and that's how they survive the winters. But if it's a really bad winter, there will be high mortality, especially of the babies. They're also very well adapted to human environments. Not many other mammals do that. And the other 2 species of peccaries certainly do not do that. So that's also what gives them this extra advantage, and that's why they're widespread, and you can find them almost in every country in Latin America. Except in Latin America, they would be hunted for food if they're walking on the streets. I often send pictures and videos to my colleagues in Argentina, saying, look what I saw this morning, and they can't believe. Like, what? You're not eating it? So peccaries live in this world of scent and sounds. Imagine if you couldn't see anything, and all the way you have to make sense of the world is from what you smell or hear. And that's why if you see the peccaries you're walking outside, they will immediately put their heads up and they start sniffing you. And if you don't move, they won't know what to do out of you because they don't see you. But their smell is really good, and they use it to recognize predators, to recognize each other, to recognize humans, food. That's how they move around. And their sound is especially important to communicate with each other. They have this amazing repertoire of sounds. So how do they communicate with smell with each other? They have this, have you ever smelled them? Yeah? Yes, they're called sometimes skunk pigs. I don't like that name, but they're called that sometimes. They have this gland in their back, and this produces this very thick oil. They squirt it very easily, and that oil is what they rub with each other, and they spread that smell to the herd so that they can recognize each other. And apparently each herd has its own particular smell. And they also use it to rub against logs and rocks and trunks, and that way they mark territory. So they would say, this is our place, and each herd has their own territory, and they respect each other's territories. The sharp tusks, hard because I don't have two hands, but so yeah, maybe you show them. Yeah. So if you see that, they're very sharp, right? First, very uncommon for non-carnivores to have these long canines. The posterior part of the lower canine does not have enamel, but the top one does. So the top one rubs constantly with the lower one, and that's how they keep sharpening it. So it's constantly sharpening it. It's very sharp and pointy. And they use for defense. How can they use it for defense? This is how they do it. I need to, let's exchange. So they will open their mouth as much as they can, and they do, and then they use the lower canines to rip your leg up. I mean, whatever they are defending against, not necessarily people. So these are the ones that are going to hurt, and those are the ones that are sharpened constantly by these ones, right? So they will do it like this. And so that's why they don't have a lot of animals who dare to try to kill them. The only animals that try to kill them try to kill the little babies, but not the adults. Even jaguars will think twice before trying to attack an adult. Thank you. So when they're eating, because they have these incisors, the canines that interlock with each other, they cannot move their jaw to the sides. Yeah, what you're doing, yeah. Have you seen a horse or a cow eat? Can you show me with your mouth how they eat? Yeah, like yeah, good. You look so great. Yeah. Well, they cannot do that. They can only go up and down because those canines are in the way. But that's a strategy because when they are eating these seeds that are very, very hard, the canines help to stabilize the jaw, and then they can bite, and they have a very strong biting force. And that's why they have this very large jaw to have all these muscles that allow them to have this strength in their mouth. And they can eat incredibly hard seeds that no other mammal can eat. One way that this species differentiates its niche with the other one, with the wily peccary, is because they share the same habitat, is the wily peccary has even stronger bite force. So the hardest seeds out in the forest, these guys cannot eat, but the wily peccaries do. And those tend to be palm seeds. So what do they eat? They are mostly herbivores, frugivores, but also opportunists. So they will eat animal matter if they find it. If they find carrion, if they find a lizard, or they find an animal that is there, they will eat it. They're not going to be chasing or seeking and trying to find animals to eat, but they will eat it. But they eat almost everything else that comes from a plant. The fruits, the seeds, the grasses, fungi, agave hearts, soft stems, flowers. And some invertebrates. I've seen the wily peccary eating fish. Interesting, they just walk into the creek and they will eat a fish if they can. And they also, when they're digging, sometimes they're eating earthworms, not only roots and tubers. So they consume in total 212 plant species. This is from a study done in the tropics from 53 families. So they have a large variety of food. And sometimes they follow the monkeys because the monkeys are kind of clumsy and they eat and they drop a lot of fruits down. So the peccaries have learned to follow them and eat what they left behind. Especially in the rainforest, when it rains a lot, there's not a lot of food down on the ground because there's water, right? Because it's raining so much. So that's when it becomes harder for them to find food. Now everybody knows that they eat prickly pears, and people think that that's what they like. Yeah, they might like it, but it's not preferred. If they have something else, they will eat something else. I mean, wouldn't you? Would you be eating prickly pears? So the prickly pear doesn't have proteins and doesn't have easily digestible energy. So why do they eat them? Well, because it's the only thing they can find. But if a peccary was going to be eating only prickly pears, they will have kidney stones and other problems. They might even die or abort their babies. And that's because these cactus have high levels of oxalic acid. That's called calcium oxalate, and it comes in like these tiny, tiny crystals that might get stuck in the peccary's mouth and throat and hurts them. And many plants have them. It's a defense mechanism that plants have to avoid herbivory. And we eat it too. When we eat spinach, they have the same chemical, but it's not in large quantities, so it doesn't hurt us. But if you are someone like me that likes to try plants when you're walking in the rainforest, when you shouldn't be trying them, then you can feel the consequences in your throat. They can have renal failure if they eat this cactus only. So they're eating it because there's nothing else during time of the year, but some studies have found that not all cactuses have the same concentration of this chemical, and they know which ones have the lower ones. So they will prefer to eat the ones that have lower concentrations. And even in one plant, the inner parts, ones that are closer inside, have less. So they try to go for those parts. But they also eat it because that's where they get their water in the desert, right? In times of the year where there's no water, they can get 80% of their water comes from prickly pear. And they can get 3 liters of water only by eating 4 kilograms of cactus. So now you know next time you're lost in the desert, just go and eat prickly pears because you will get all the water you need and more. They're also very good at finding roots. They love roots and tubers, and that sense of smell is what helps them to find them. So they're walking and they're digging and using their nose to dig, and that's because they know there's something good down there. This is a big root. It's from the Chaco bioregion where I do a study. This is a subsistence hunter who works with me doing research. And he showed me this plant. And at the top, it just looks like a stick. You would never think much about that plant, but the animals know that down deep, 3 feet down, is this big tuber like this. It looks like a potato or a yucca. And they find it. And that's just through their sense of smell. They also like to use ant mouth because they have lots of minerals, so they need minerals, so they would be licking the ground. And the same if you've seen other ungulates might do, like deer, even cows, sometimes you have to supplement them with salt because they need those minerals. And now the babies. I told you they're so cute, right? And the babies are called reds because they have this reddish coloration with that black mane and the back. And they're very cute and very noisy and vocal. The female can bear young all throughout the year, and you might see babies all throughout the year, but there is more of a season during the summer. So the females are breeding right now, or reproducing, mating right now, and their babies will be born in the summer when there's more food and the temperature is better. But we've seen babies walking in the snow, but probably the mortality is higher. So they will try, even though they bear young throughout the year, the best season would be to have them in the summer. They can have 1 to 4 babies, but mostly 2. and generally one survives to be an adult. When the baby is born, the mom doesn't lick the baby, just pushes the baby and tumbles the baby to release the afterbirth tissue that is covering the baby, and also to stimulate the muscles because they need that baby to be up and running right away because the herd is on the move constantly. And that's what is called a precocial yawn. That means as a couple hours after being born, it's already a functional person, I was going to say. It's a functional peccary. And he can walk and run and make sounds and feed and do what he needs to do and follow the herd. There, you will see them under the mom, but they also can be under any adult. So if there's anything that scares the herd, the animals will be making this alert sound, and the babies immediately run under the adult's legs. And all the adults protect the piglets. The moms and are standing up, different from pigs that lie down. And for the first 4 weeks, they exclusively drink mother's milk. By 6 weeks, they're mixing other foods, and then they're weaned from the mom. So the mom could potentially have a second offspring in a year. So they're territorial. They mark their territory, and they like to use the same place over and over. So if you've seen peccaries from your window, your house, they're probably always the same, that keep living there. And if something happens to that herd, if the animals die for some reason, then others might move in. But you can see the same ones for years, and it'll be the same herd. And the size of the territory varies depending on how many resources there is. If there's water, if there's a lot of food, they will try to have a smaller territory because it's expensive to defend territory. So why would you fight for it if you have all the food you need? And they mark the territory with that mask by rubbing against plants and other things and rocks, but also with the feces. These territories might overlap and they share water sources. So they might not be using it at the same time, but they might overlap in water areas. They like their resting areas. They like to take siestas or naps. And especially in the summer when it's hot, because they don't have that underfur that would also protect them from very hot temperatures, what they do is, again, use behavior to cope with the temperatures. That means they look for places that are cool, shady, protected, or muddy. And that could be a yard that has been watered with sprinkles, or riverbed, or any other place that would be cool. And so they spend a lot of time sleeping in the summer and resting, and then they get active at the evenings. In the rainforest, you will see that they also use hollow roots of trees, big trees. And this is actually one way that the indigenous people would hunt them, because if you chase them, they seek protection in these hollow trees, and then it's easy to get to them. And mud is really great. If it's hot out there and your skin is not good to protect you, you want to have that layer of mud that will protect you from the sun so that you don't get burned, and also from the temperature, and it just cools you down. And also the mud protects you from extra parasites. So they love the mud, and they spend a lot of time in the mud, especially during the summers. They're diurnal, but when it's too hot, they can be active only during the night, or at dusk, or really early in the mornings. They're very social, very social. The group is constantly interacting with each other. The same herds remain together all their life. There isn't like animals that leave the herd or that come the herd. Often it can happen, but it's not like other social animals where it's constantly animals that, the young males might have to leave the herd because they cannot reproduce in the same herd. In these groups, they remain together, and so their families, they can be up to 50 individuals. Here in Prescott, I've seen around 20 and 25, I think I counted the most. I don't know if you have experience seeing them. You counted them? 24. Yeah. And in the rainforest, they're smaller groups. So you will have both sexes, adults and offspring all together. They form these close bonds with each other, and that mutual grooming is what keeps them together. So they enhances the interpersonal relationships. Good thing to remember. So this is something that they like to do. Have you seen them doing that? Yeah, that's when they rub a head with the butt, and that's how they spread their smell. And they say like, yeah, you're one of me, of us. We are in the same group, and so they kind of mark each other to recognize each other. Very fun, and they do that several times per day. Even the same individuals. Every time they meet, they can't just walk by. They have to say hello in this way. Kind of like dogs, right? And then they use these vocalizations. They talk to each other. They communicate in many, many different ways. The other species, the wily peccary, even has a larger repertoire. Barking, grunting, woofing, growling, squealing, and also by clicking their teeth. So because they don't see well, and if they're foraging and they have to spread far away from each other to find enough food, they need to tell each other, hey, I'm here. Where are you? I'm here. I'm here. Where are you? I'm here. And they say that constantly, and they say it with a sound that sounds something like, yeah, can you do that? Yeah, kind of like that. And that means I'm here. Where are you? I'm here. Where are you? I'm here. Where are you? I'm here. But that way they keep track of each other and they don't get lost. And then they have the other sounds like, hey, this pumpkin is mine. So don't get close to it. And the baby is like, I'm excited. I want to play. I'm excited. That's the squealing sound that you hear all the time. Or like, I'm scared. I don't know what's happening. I'm scared. And they squeal constantly. And the parent's like, yeah, I get it. So they have this communication that is very sophisticated. And this constant scratching, touching, smelling, even biting each other, that's part of how they maintain the social bonds. And there's almost no aggression. You might see them kind of calling with each other, especially when they find one pumpkin. So next time, put several pumpkins out there. And that's when they might like get a little aggressive with each other. But other than that, they really don't fight. And there's a lot of playing. Babies with babies, and babies with adults, even juveniles, or even adults play with each other. So this is one of the stories that made it to the news, and it's a local story that happened right here in Prescott. So I'll tell you a little bit of the background. What you see here is a dead javelina here, and those two are alive. So there's this kid, his name is Dante. He was 8 years old. He had to come out with a project for the science fair, right, for the schools. He looks out his windows and sees a dead javelina. And he talks with the parents, say, can I do a project with this? And they say, yeah, sure. The grandma gives him a camera, a sensor camera. Says, just put it out there and see what happens. And the kid is excited to see what animal will come and eat the dead javelina. He didn't get to see who ate the javelina. What he saw was something a lot more amazing. I was in the science fairs with my little girl who also got selected for the science fair. And I'm walking by and I see this kid project. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. This is new to science. And the kid has written down to say, I tried to contact peccary scientists, but nobody got back to me. So I'm like, hey, I'm a peccary scientist and I'm right here. Let's talk about this. So I met with him and his mom, and we wrote a scientific paper together. And the kid was the first author, and his institution was by then Sacred Heart Catholic School. And we wrote this paper. It was published in Ecology, a reputable scientific journal. And I want to show you now what happened. Lots of news got interested on this, and it was published in lots of news, and we got calls all the time. Folks from fox 10 from Phoenix came and did an interview, and it was published everywhere. National Geographic did a good job at putting these very short clips of videos that these kids had captured and put them together and made a one video. So I'm going to show you what happened there. Should I use a computer to do that? Or this? Oh, there. So for 10 days, the herd stayed with the dead individual. They slept next to it, they tried to pick it up, they rubbed, they did all that social bonding that they do with the members of the herd, but with the dead one. They even defended it from coyotes twice. They chased the coyotes away, and the third time the coyotes got to it finally, and they ate the carcass. So this shows us the animals were actually showing this mourning behavior towards their death. It wasn't just by chance, and it wasn't just doing their normal behavior. Because the animal was starting to smell, the kid's family moved the animal far away from the house, and they moved the camera with it, and they noticed that the herd was still coming back to it. Right? So they weren't interested in the sight; they were interested in the animal that had died and trying to bring it back. And that type of behavior has been observed in other mammals, especially in elephants, where they might stay for a long, long time next to the dead one, and even come back after years where the animal has died. There's still many unknowns. That was something new for science, but there are many other things that we still don't know about this species. And one of the reasons is that it's hard to study them because they look alike to each other. How do you study behavior? You would have to mark each one of them individually so you know, oh, this individual is so-and-so and is doing this with so-and-so. But if you can't follow them, it's hard to know. So we don't know really what's the social hierarchy, if there is any. Is it a dominance? Is it a leader? And you will read, everyone comes with their own hypotheses and their own ideas, and those get published, but honestly, truly, we don't know how they behave. In captivity, what they've seen is that often the females are dominant and larger body animals dominate over small ones. But dominant doesn't mean like an alpha male or an alpha female. It just means they might get access to food first. So they often might squabble, but not seriously. They rarely hurt each other, but they do kind of keep each other away from food, especially if the food is precious. And they don't seem to fight over females. The mating is more like promiscuous, any female with any males, different males, like they don't keep territory over females. And that's also what helps the herd to kind of mix genetics. So it's not common to find these serious fights. They would not hurt each other. But many people think of them as ferocious. Anyone wants to read that out loud? It'd be good to have some British accent. I don't know. Anyways, they're depicted as furious, as very ferocious, right? And people are afraid of them. And yeah, sure. If you're walking outside with your dog at dusk, you can get attacked. And that's the other reason why they're in the news. So mostly it's people walking early in the morning or at dusk. If the animals feel a corner, they might react aggressively. Or if you have a dog, because yeah, they don't like dogs because for them a dog is a predator. And so even if it's a small dog, especially if the dog barks at them or tries to chase them, then the animal will defend themselves, especially if they have babies. And if the humans wants to get in between the javelina and the dog, that's when the humans get hurt mostly. So if they're in the news, I kind of like this one that says, a woman has been horribly injured after she was mauled by a pack of wild animals most Australians have never seen or heard of. That's kind of funny. Yeah, I wonder why Australians haven't seen it. So, but these kind of interactions are happening more often as urban sprawl encroach into the desert and we're taking away habitat for them. Or they actually think that we are providing them with habitat when we feed them, or we put pools in a garden and they want to get water or irrigation, or especially if we are intentionally feeding them. If you feed them, they get to understand that that food is theirs, that place is theirs, and they can become entitled to it. Like, you need to keep giving me food. And if you don't, they get a little aggressive. So that's why it's better to not feed them. And if you're feeding birds, just don't put the bird feed on the ground. So the less interaction, the better. Better is to observe them from a distance. And if you do encounter them, stay calm, maybe make some sound, but nothing that could scare them, and just walk away, and they would not attack you. They do defend themselves. One way is when they're facing danger, they will try to intimidate you by putting this mane, the hairs in their back, they put them up, they squirt the smell, they send this scent away, and they might run away. But if they're cornered and they can't, then the only option they have is to charge at you. But that way is how they defend themselves from predators. And they might also click their teeth. Let me see if I can do this. So if you see when they do this, like really fast, they make all that sound, which can be very intimidating. And when there are many of them, and they make the sound at the same time, they can really scare their predators as coyotes and others. I also told you that they were ecosystem engineers. What that means is a species that alters the physical environment. All animals have a role in the ecosystem, but if they're also changing the physical environment in a disproportionately quantity, disproportionately to its abundance, then it may be called a keystone species or an ecosystem engineer. So they modify their environment, especially the older species that lives in really large groups. And that's because they dig the hole and by the ground, and by doing that, water accumulates there, and this becomes habitat for amphibians and fish. And there's some studies that are found in tropical forests. There's some fish that only live in the waters that are being made by peccaries. So they become breeding habitats for many frog species. They also eat a lot of the seeds and the seedlings, so it might completely change the forest diversity. And this is a study excluding peccaries and letting peccaries through, so you can see how it changes the forest. Some species also reproduce through the digestive tract of the peccaries, and they might also just speed up the seeds. So they eat the fruit, and then they're walking away, and then they speed up the fruit, and they help with the dispersion of the seeds for those plants. This is a ficus tree over here. It's a very important plant in the rainforest because it produces fruits all year long, where other trees will just produce fruits in one time of the year, right? But the figs are constantly producing. Each individual is producing in a different time of the year. So it's a key species in the rainforest to feed all the frugivorous species. So helping to disperse that tree is also important. They're prey of some animals, like jaguars and bobcats and coyotes. And this was a study where they had put a camera, a sensor camera, and just by chance, they were so lucky that they saw an RP eagle capturing a baby javelina. And it was just by chance. It was very lucky researchers that they found that. So predators will try to eat the babies, but very few of them will dare to attack a herd. Sometimes the peccary might be hurt and left out of this herd, or just cannot catch up with the herd. And so if it's alone, that might become prey of a predator. And jaguars are the ones who will eat them the most. It's a very good size food for a jaguar, so they are following them. And when I was studying the wildlife peccaries in Costa Rica, I often would see the tracks of the wildlife peccary and then the tracks of the jaguar right behind, like very fresh. They're following them, waiting for someone to stay behind. But they're also very important for a source of food for many indigenous and rural people. It's a lot of meat, and it's easy to hunt. For people who don't have guns, they can still hunt them by chasing them, or if they have dogs, even better, because they seek shelter. And so they will like stay in one place, and then they can reach them and shoot them with like a bow and arrow or something else. Many people ask why they were not domesticated. They can be tamed, but not domesticated. Some Mayans have used them for rituals and for food. You can have them. They can be kept in captivity, but they don't have the conditions to be domesticated. They don't reproduce as much. Their temperament can be unpredictable. They can still be aggressive. If you mix members that are not from the same family, they can kill each other. They're very good with their own families, but not so good if they don't recognize each other. So all of those characteristics have made them undomesticable. Oh, is that a word? Undomesticable. Or I just made it up. But their skins are still being used and exported from Peru to Europe. You can buy a pair of gloves for $500 or shoes. So it's a very good skin. And before the 1990s, almost every country in Latin America exported hundreds of thousands of skins of peccaries to Europe. And then all those countries made this agreement, it's called the CITES Convention, where they agreed to not be exporting animal skins anymore. But one country, Peru, still does it, and it has a special permit that allows them to export them because these animals are being managed sustainably and by indigenous people who harvest them with a very controlled, self-controlled system. This is the only country that legally can export skins. So they're less threatened than the other species, and I think you might know by now, they have a large distribution, they have a higher reproduction than the other two species, they adapt better to climate, and they also adapt to coexist with humans. So I want to tell you a little bit more about before I got there, remember that I told you in the southern part of this distribution it went extinct? Luckily, now they're being reintroduced, and this is a project where I helped to make it happen because I went there as the IUCN expert to do a habitat analysis and say, yes, this is good habitat, you can release them here. And then they released them, and it was very challenging because if you don't have, as I say, a group, a family group, and you mix individuals from different groups, they kill each other, they hurt each other. Some individuals would be too stressed and they would just take off and disappear. It was hard to keep them as a cohesive herd. So they had to do several attempts until they found what worked. And by now we have about 70 peccaries and they're reproducing. So it's working. They've been reintroduced in an area where they've been extinct for 100 years. Let me talk a little bit about the other two species. The Chacoan peccary, oh, again, the map. The map disappeared. But that's Bolivia, Paraguay, and Argentina. It's obviously different, right? It's bigger, has these skinny legs, big head. And this species lives in small groups, 5 to 6 individuals. Often you see them alone. That's why in Bolivia they're called solitarios, means alone. And they're more endangered because they need this specific habitat that is the Chacoan forest that now is being under deforestation. And they also have fewer babies. This is one of the pictures from my research team. We put camera sensors outside in the forest, so we were very happy when we saw them because they're in very low numbers and they are disappearing in many of the places of their original distribution, mostly due to deforestation. This forest has been basically untouched for thousands of years. Indigenous people live there, they use the forest as their source of food and shelter. Rural people who live there also harvest and hunt, but they do not demolish the forest. Now we have these large companies that are coming in and removing the forest, then they burn everything that is left. They don't even sell the wood, they burn and grow soy crops, soybeans. And that's not to make tofu, in case you're vegetarian and feeling bad about that, is to feed livestock. The wildly peccary is the other species. What makes them interesting is that they are very social, even more. They have these huge groups. There accounts to like 1,000 individuals. I've seen groups of 70, 80 individuals, but they can form really big groups. They display similar behaviors. These two in the front are doing the, hi, how are you? Who are you? Here, this is my smell, this is mine. And very together all the time. That much together. They just love to cuddle, and the babies would always climb and sleep on top of the adults. So you can imagine that they're very susceptible to overhunting because they remain together. When I was doing my research and I captured one of them to put a radio collar, the herd stayed around and stayed there for 9 hours until we were done with the animal and everything, put the radio collar and did all the measurements. The herd stayed there and waited for that animal. If you're a hunter and you kill one, you can easily kill all the other ones that are nearby. They're very good swimmers, and you wouldn't tell by the shape of their body, but they can cross big rivers. They live in big groups, as I say. And I want to show you, can you help me with this? So with the first video, what you're going to try to do is count how many individuals you see. They're crossing a river, and your job is to count, and we'll see who gets closer to the real number. Ooh. Maybe close there. Let's make it bigger and start from the beginning. And just go with. Okay? Oh, there's still one more. Yeah, it's like, wait, the water's cool. This thing here. We can close it. Just to give you the idea of what a big group looks like. No, I don't know. A lot. So because they're so big and noisy and they're communicating and also they're clacking their teeth and making noise when they're eating the seeds, they're very conspicuous. So they're also susceptible to overhunting because it's easy to find them. And when I was working in Costa Rica, they would leave the boundaries of a national park, and then people will learn about it. Sport hunters would come, even though hunting is not allowed, so it's sport but illegal hunting. They will go and follow the herds and hunt them. And so a herd might go back to the national park with only half of the individuals of the herd. So the conservation of this particular species is trickier because it's so easy to find them and to hunt them, and hard to study. So we look at this next one. And so that sound is the clacking of the teeth. So it could be intimidating, right? If you're in the rainforest surrounded by them. So that clicking sound, that's with their teeth. And that's because they're in distress. So they're probably sensing the presence of the human who is filming this. And that's why they're making this sound. There is an alarm and also trying to scare the intruder. So it makes them so exciting to study and being close to them. But as I say, I got to be close to them, and I use a trick that is a secret, but I want to tell you if you don't tell anyone. Okay, promise? I found their feces, and I put them all over my clothing. So I mimicked their smell. And that way they thought I was one of them. And I was also stinky, because we are in the rainforest, you can't help yourself but just stink because of the heat and hiking all day, following them. So eventually they accepted me, and that's why I was able to be with them and follow them and did my research through direct observation, which is the best way to study animals. And so that's the end of my presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
I have a question. I see them often. I walk my dog every day in our neighborhood, and sometimes I see often just one, and I always wonder, where are all the other ones?
Yeah.
We are very careful to stop and wait.
So if you see one, it could be one that is just behind and is going to catch up, or they are just spread. And they can spread in a large area because they're foraging and each one is finding the food. So you might just come across one of them. And if they're crossing the road, you probably notice sometimes there's several of them that cross, and if you stay there, a few minutes later, there's another one that's crossing. But it could be also a solitary animal that might have been left out of the herd. Yeah?
So the herd in my neighborhood, I pass often when I'm walking, and if they're crossing the road, there's always a big one that stops in the middle of the road like a crossing guard. And then the line goes past. Is that a matriarch or a patriarch or
As I say, it's not known if there is a hierarchy. Most likely there is no hierarchy. And it might be just one that took on that role of helping the herd. Yeah. It could be a female or a male. If you get the chance to see it from behind, you might be able to tell if it's a female or a male. But from the size and alone, you can't tell.
They're smart enough to guard the road while the rest cross.
Yeah, they're helping their fellows and the babies, especially if they're babies. Yeah.
How aggressive are they when it comes to territory? Is it just a couple of people, or a couple of animals, or the whole herd?
Yeah, you can have the whole herd. Apparently, there is not a lot of aggression between herds, are there? You don't see dead javelinas because they've been killed by another javelina. So it's more like, it's trying to scare each other, like we're more and we're bigger and we're stronger and yeah. And so the other group might be like, okay, we're just moving along, go somewhere else. But they are not, you don't see attacks like you might see with other species, with males particularly become very territorial, especially over females. What I've noticed with the other species, the one that I followed, is that the herds will keep more of a temporal territorial rather than space, meaning they can share the same space but not at the same time. So they might overlap, but not at the same time. Yeah.
With the clustering so close together, are they susceptible to viruses? For instance, like if you have cattle that are up too close together, are there many viral diseases?
No more than natural. They have, some diseases. Sometimes they lose hair. There's a disease that can attack their skin. But they have evolved as a social group. The pigs, not the peccaries, the pigs can carry the brucella bacteria that attacks livestock. It doesn't affect the pigs, but it affects the livestock. And some peccaries have been found to also carry that bacteria that can be devastating for the livestock industry. But it's not as common as with the pigs. Mm-hmm.
I was walking in Prescott Lakes one morning, didn't have my dog with me, and a large group of peccaries came running across the road, lots of babies and middle size, and then there was this great big one. He drove off from the group right at me. I stopped and I thought, uh-oh, this is not good. So I went and hid in the bushes, and he kept coming up, looking like he was going to come after me. Didn't move, and eventually he went away.
Mm-hmm.
Where did he have attacked?
I cannot assure you. They're not attacked, but generally, if they don't feel that you're a threat, they would not attack. So what you did was good. Yeah, it's protecting the herd and it's protecting the babies. And if you don't approach them, they might just, get close to you. When I was studying them, sometimes they will charge at me and stop 3 feet from me. And then they smell and they do all their display, like I'm very scary and I don't want you here, and then they go away. So generally those attacks that we see in the news is when they have dogs, and especially when they're trying to defend the dog. So they're trying, to take the dog away from the animal. Yeah, but it's good to be cautious. Just stop, maybe walk back, maybe clap your hands and make some sound and talk to them.
Their lifespan.
In captivity, they can live up to 25 years. In the wild, it's about 10 to 12.
Bitten by one and they taste like.
I've not been bitten by one. And yeah, I did eat them because when I work with indigenous people or native people they eat wildlife and I'm with them. It's part of developing a relationship with people is to eat what they offer. And so I have eaten them. And it's a good meat. It's very meaty. And I'm vegetarian. But I bet if you were carnivores, you would say it tastes good. No?
But this is a
course of a week or maybe a little more, on several occasions, she observed one javelina come up to the fence line. Her dogs were out. No one barked, no one huffed, no one looked aggressive. And they would run together up and down the fence line. And she said she observed it several times and they were playing.
Interesting.
And it's secondhand, but I trust my sister. She's a good observer and she's always worked with animals. So I trust her observation.
But it would be great if she can videotape that. Yeah, as I said, there's just so much about biodiversity in our own species that coexist with us. We don't know much about them. Like, we didn't know they would mourn the dead.
Wiry hair and
Yeah.
I don't know, but
And when my husband and I used to walk our dog would not bark at them. And we had our dog off leash sometimes. And then we saw the javelina, we were like, oh my God, our dog is off leash. But she would never bark at them. So it's not all dogs react aggressively towards them. And the javelinas did not care about our dog. Yeah.
I wonder if they brought up like
Hmm. Could be.
and they got on it and then they thought, oh,
You remind me of something I wanted to show you. This book is called Those Pesky Pigs. Okay. It's written by a person who lives outside of Tucson. He lives in a mobile home. And he has been observing javelinas who go and sleep under his mobile home. And he has been observing them for years and taking pictures and taking very good notes. He's a natural history master. And he took a lot of very good pictures and wrote this book from his observations. And he has lots of interesting observations. Like, he sent me a picture of one that had the hoofs were like completely long and curved up. He also sent me a picture of two males mating, and they would take turns. And just a lot of interesting observation that you can only do when you are looking at them and observing them. The scientists sometimes don't have the time to do that. So he wrote this book, and I recommend if you want to read it, it's on Amazon. And it would be really nice to help him because he's just a poor man living in mobile home. Doesn't have any money to repair his camera, which is broke. And it's very nice because he wrote a letter to me. A letter, imagine, a piece of paper. And introducing himself and asking me if I will be interested in talking with him. So we have been in communication since then. Really nice. And yeah, so look it up, Amazon. And I told him, really, that title, Those Pesky Pigs? And he's like, yeah, I want to call it that. Okay. Yeah.
Is there any odor or repellent that will repel them? Want to keep them off your property?
Yeah, you can buy mountain lion urine. Yeah, like researchers buy that all the time. And you can spread that around your garden. You can also look for plants that are not attractive to them. So there are ways to garden in a way that would not attract them or repel them. Or a little fence. You know, a 3 feet tall fence is enough to keep them away because they don't jump. Yeah.
Are they susceptible to African?
I don't know. We'll look it up. Yeah.
What's the gestation period?
It varies between like 140 and 150 days.
What lasts 3 years a year, maybe?
Maybe not 2, 1.5, because it would take them 140 days gestation, then about 2 months of nursing the babies, and then the female might become active again. So maybe 1 baby, and then by the end of the year can have another one. So in 3 years you will have in 2 years you will have 3 gestations.
I heard that several years ago there was a debate how they migrated north, and were they encouraged to be, I
Yeah, so one partially it's natural, and because climate is getting warmer, it's getting easier for them to move further north, and it's just natural. That species will expand their distribution area. There has also been changes in the ecosystems. So instead of having those large expansions of savannas that we had in Arizona before livestock was introduced, that was not good habitat for them. As livestock eats the grass and more scrubs and shrubs take over, it produces better habitat for them. So it's a change in the habitat, it is helping them to spread. But also some people bring them to their ranches for hunting. So both things could be happening at the same time. And it is big business, as I mentioned, 30,000 individuals killed by sport hunters per year. Yeah, that's a lot of money. It's not only the money going with the hunting permit, but also the ranches that host the hunters and the ranching, the hunting guide. There's a lot of money involved around this. So I wouldn't be surprised that they're intentionally moving them. Chase?
So going off that last, what you were just saying about the changing of the vegetation structure around here, if the overall agenda up north of ponderosa pine restoration would make it down here, that would indicate that the population of javelinas would drastically fall off here to probably restore ponderosa pine.
You mean because there would be lower density of pines?
Yeah, exactly. You were saying that that former, more savanna-esque structure really as good for them as
Yeah.
visits. So
Yeah, but still a ponderosa pine with low density of pines, but it still has oaks and other conifers will still be a good habitat for them. There's more, at this, where we are, they're more limited by altitude. Even though they've been seen in Flagstaff, which is higher altitude than here. But again, they might be seen there for a few years when the years are good and not very extreme winters, but extreme winter comes with several days of very low temperatures, it might kill them. No. Good question. I don't know. I bet the Arizona Game and Fish might have a count or an estimate. Because that's how they have to come up with the hunting permits, right? They have to have an idea how many they have. Yeah. The social behavior is so interesting. Yeah, that's I think is the most interesting, how much they interact with each other constantly throughout the day. Also when they're cuddling together and they go to sleep, they sleep on top of each other. Like we kind of like our own space, but they don't. They want to be close to each other and the baby's climbing over them. And this constant communication is very interesting. Like they're constantly talking to each other to keep the cohesion of the group. Now, sometimes if the group gets too big, they might split into two groups. And some studies in Brazil have shown that a big herd might split, and then you have two smaller herds. And that's how they maintain. You don't want them to be too many because then they would run out of resources and they would have to move long distances to find enough food. The other thing that's interesting, thanks for asking. I told you I could be on a roll, right? Is that they have nomadic movements, even migratory in a way, because if they are eating in the lowlands, in the rainforest, when it rains a lot, there's not a lot of food that they can find because they need to find the food on the ground. It's raining a lot, all those fruits and seeds are washed away. The only thing they can find is plants, the stems and the leaves, and those don't have a lot of nutrition. They're high in minerals, but not in fat or proteins. So they try to find upper grounds, and that might mean 30, 50 kilometers that they move. So they have these very long movements following, the higher grounds where it's not raining, finding the food, and then they come back. So indigenous peoples talk about them disappearing, sometimes for years, and then they're coming back. And that's still unknown. We recently published a paper that is called Mysterious Disappearance of wildlife peccaries. Sometimes they disappear for 20 years from a place. And it's not known if they are somewhere, they're moving, or a disease killed them. It's just a mysterious.
When they go on the move, is it always the same guy in the front?
Or woman. It's unknown. Yeah. Some people will tell you, yes, it's the same, it's the leader. Local people say they tend to be smaller and white, the one that goes in the front. You know, there's a lot of tales and myths, but scientists still cannot answer that question. Mm-hmm.
So occasionally, will individuals, they'll say this redwood.
Well, yeah, thanks so much for saying that. If the herd gets scared and the babies are very small, the babies tend to behave the same way than the babies of deer. They hide and they stay put. And the herd goes away, they scatter, and then they reunite and come back for the babies. So yeah, if you find a little baby, don't take it. Maybe you can wait and see if the herd comes back. But it might be that the baby's just waiting there. Mm-hmm.
Will another mother nurse orphan?
They do. Yeah, and sometimes you can see a baby nursing from different females in the group. So I don't know if the baby is orphan, if like the group would adopt it. I would tend to think they do because the females don't care if it's not their own baby that is nursing. So probably that happens. Are we going here forever? I do have to prepare my class for tomorrow. Thank you.